So Randy, does racing come naturally for you? Was that something your dad was interested in?
Absolutely. My father built a race car in 1955, and the driver was his across the street neighbor, Joe Sonner, and they raced at the old Skyline Speedway out in Sugar Grove, a place that you and I have been out to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my dad and Joe Sonner built a modified that they raced out there. Then the next year, I think we had one more baby in our family, and I think Mom put the kibosh on Dad in racing. And Joe Sonner, at that point, got a ride in a late model car owned by the Johnson boys out of Bust-I. And they raced at State Line Speedway, and Joe Sonner was the very first track champion in the history of State Line Speedway, way back in 1956. Then, since my dad wasn't allowed to build cars and do that, he opened a gas station up on Fairmount Avenue, and they had a wrecker. Every gas station had a wrecker service back then, and he knew Leonard Briggs and Jerry Frank and those guys, and they convinced him to bring his wrecker to State Line Speedway on Saturday nights. And so he did that for a period of years. I'm going to guess like 57, 58, somewhere in there. And you know, I can remember, you know, going up there and sitting in the stands and watching my dad run the wrecker from the infield. And after a while, I think Mom put the kibosh on the wrecker too, because we had another baby at home. And you see where this is all going, Greg?
Sure.
Babies and racing never mixed.
All the great athletes, when they get married, things happen. You know?
Yeah.
So, but then nevertheless, State Line is in your blood from early, from the get-go.
My dad was a huge racing fan, and he would take us up to State Line. I can remember being maybe 10 or 11 years old and sitting way down low on the bleachers in the first or the second row, and I can remember Squirt Johns driving around the racetrack in his big Dodge there, that big orange pumpkin that you and I are familiar with, and we were sitting down toward turn one, and I remember Squirt's car kicked up a stone and it bounced off my head and put a little cut on my forehead. And you know, I was like 10 or 11 years old at the time, but yeah, I couldn't get enough racing. My dad was a big NASCAR fan. He went to as many NASCAR races as my mother would allow him to go to. He was at the opening of Daytona Speedway in 1959. He and some of the guys that worked for him at his gas station went down to Florida and were there for the very first race. And as the kids got older, he took us to races like in Michigan. I remember going to Michigan with my dad, and yeah, he was a real race nut. He was always a car guy, and that, I guess, rubbed off on me.
And as your dad, you know, had his facility, were there anybody there that we would know that went on to racing other than Joe Sonner or any other?
Well, I mean, he knew all those guys. I can remember that he took us. Back in the day, you used to go out for a ride on Sundays. Sunday afternoons, the family would go for a ride. And I can remember going down to Ron Blackmer's house down in Youngsville. Why? I have no idea. But somehow my dad must have known him, and you know, we were out for a ride and we were down in Pennsylvania. Well, let's stop by Blackmer's house, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so yeah, he knew those guys. He was in the car business, you know, buying junk cars and parts off of cars in junkyards, and so I mean that was his world.
Were you mechanically inclined? Was this something that you picked up from your dad?
I wouldn't say I was terribly mechanically inclined as a boy. I was more interested in sports. You know, I'd want to go down to Roseland Park and spend all day down there, you know, hitting a ball or kicking a football or shooting hoops or anything that had to do with a ball. I was more interested in that. As I look back, I wish that I had been more interested, because I know my dad would have taught me. My dad was a very, very fine mechanic. He owned a bunch of antique cars that he refurbished from nothing. So my dad was a great mechanic, and I know that he would have taught me more than what he did. I mean, I wasn't an idiot. I mean, I knew which end of the screwdriver to hold, but I was more interested in sports when I was a kid.
So then how did that morph into an interest in being involved in a team?
Well, like I said, I always liked to go to the races, and through high school, I mean, you'd get your Saturday night date and and go to the racetrack, and then by next week you'd need a new one because that one didn't want to go back. Good point, huh? So, but anyway, I'd go to the racetrack all the time. So I was always interested in racing. My brother Jay was friends with Scott Gustafson and some of those guys that hung around with Scotty G. And somewhere in the early '80s, I went with my brother down to Scotty's garage, and I knew some of those guys, but pretty soon I knew them all, and I'd stop down every once in a while and just to hang out, because I was interested in what they were doing. And somewhere about that same time, '83 or '84, every race team struggles for sponsorship and to gain enough money to keep the car going, and Scotty G and his guys were no different. They always needed money, and I thought that I could help them out by maybe finding some sponsors for them, which I was able to do. I was able to get a sponsorship deal hooked up with Jamestown Beverages, Don Zioli Sr., and I was able to then, get some money and send it to Scott, and he used that for a couple of years. And then I think it was like the winter of '84, going into '85. Scott told me that he didn't need that sponsorship going forward, that he had something else going on, and somehow that made the rounds. And the next thing you know, I get a call from Del Seekings and John Lilly, who were involved in a sportsman car that Dick Barton was racing. Franny Siemens, who was going to take over the racetrack in 1985, had told the guys in the sportsman division that he was going to eliminate that class. So Lilly and Del Seekings and those guys of that team made the decision that they were going to jump into late models. They didn't want to go backwards into cadets. They wanted to go forward into late models. So they knew I had a sponsor in my back pocket. And they called me up and said, can we get together and talk? And that's how it happened that I got hooked up with those guys. And in 1985 and the next several years, Dick and those guys had cars that were sponsored by Jamestown Beverages, Miller American cars. I can't remember all the different brands that got sponsored on the cars at the time, but that was all through Jamestown Beverages. And I kind of assumed a sponsorship getting role with that team. I was able to secure some more sponsors for those guys. I started writing newsletters that we sent out to all the sponsors to keep them informed of what we were doing, but we also sent it out to media people, and we were trying to build the exposure of Dick and that race team in order to secure more sponsors and maybe at a higher level sponsor. So I was pushing that sponsorship angle pretty hard and trying to get exposure for Dick and those guys. Fortunately, those guys were having success. jumping into late models in '85. I think Dick was the Rookie of the Year in '85, and I think he was the track champion in Erie in '85. So they had instant success, which helped my search for more sponsors. I would say, hey, you know, the money you've given these guys is working. They're taking it, they're using it, and they're having success with it. So can you give us some more money next year? You know, can we find some other sponsors? And yeah, I did that for a bunch of years with them. I helped them to land Ron Nielsen, which was the turning point for Dick in that race team. I was going to the races with Dick and those guys, and we were racing at Lernerville on Friday nights at the time, and we got to be friendly with some of the officials down there and the announcer and all of that. Well, over the winter of, I think, '92, one of the officials that we were friendly with at Lernerville called Dick up and said, Ron Nielsen is thinking about getting out of racing. We had a vague recollection.
Did Ron own Lernersville?
No, he owned a car that was racing at Lernerville at the time. We vaguely knew who Ron was. We remember seeing his car at the track, and so we kind of knew who he was. We knew he had some pretty good equipment. They weren't winning. Ron wasn't winning with his car and his driver, but we could see he had some pretty good equipment. Well, this guy from Lernerville called Dick up and said that Nielsen's getting out of racing, and you know, he looks like he could be a pretty good sponsor, a pretty good car owner. You know, why don't you guys give him a call? So I picked up the phone and gave a cold call to Ron Nielsen and asked for a meeting. And Dick and I went down to his home in Meadville, and it didn't happen overnight. There was a series of meetings and a lot of give and take, some understandings that had to be developed between Ron and us. Because don't forget, Ron was based out of Meadville and we're based out of Jamestown. And we were asking him to basically turn over all his equipment to us and take it up to Jamestown and do what we want with it. I mean, it was a big leap of faith for Ron to do that. Now, he knew who we were because he'd seen us at Lernerville and we were winning races down there. So he knew that we had some ability on our team. So eventually that all got put together, and that was really the turning point in Dick Barton's career. That team had won, Dick's team had won maybe, I'm going to guess around 60 features. From 1985 up to about 1992. So, you know, they were winning. They'd won some track championships. They were doing really well. But once we got hooked up with Ron Nielsen, that took the team to a whole new level. And it, I think by the time the smoke cleared, you know, Dick had won, I don't know, 150, maybe 170 races with Ron Nielsen.
So about an extra 100 races.
Yeah. So you add that on top of the 60 he had before, and maybe another 170 with Nielsen, and a few with some other car owners after that, and that gets you to the totals where Dick is today.
What was the understanding? Do you remember kind of the at least verbal memorandum of understanding?
Oh, it was more than a verbal, Greg. We actually wrote out a contract.
Oh, really?
Yes, we did. You know, these were the things that Ron Nielsen had to do, and in turn, these were the things that the race team had to do. And everything was written down about expenses, income, who was responsible for what part of it. Just as an example, Ron was responsible for providing the race cars and the engines and the tires and all that kind of stuff. And the race team was responsible for providing the truck, the trailer, a garage. We were responsible for all the maintenance on the car. So all that stuff had to be worked out. So it was an actual business arrangement that we had. Over time, you know, we kind of threw away the paper after a while because we developed such a great friendship with Ron and he trusted us. So each year we just went up and shook hands and say, Ron, you want to do it again? He goes, yeah, sure. And that's kind of how it went forward.
Was Ron, as I understood it when we talked to him, was a Ford guy?
Yes.
What was that a conversation piece?
Not just a conversation piece. That was part of the document. We had to run Ford engines. We did not have Ford engines prior to that. We were a Chevrolet team, as probably 99% of the racing world was a Chevrolet team. But Ron was a Ford guy, and he wanted Ford engines. And we went through a long learning curve with Ron on those Ford engines. We probably changed motor builders 3 or 4 times before we finally found a guy that could build a Ford engine that would last. And that was Brad Malcott in Strasburg, Ohio. Like I say, it took several years, and Ron spent a ton of dough with different engine builders who were basically developing the dirt track late model engine for a Ford. I can remember one year we were down at Pittsburgh racing, and Scott Bloomquist, who is the god of dirt track racing, came over and talked to Dick in our race team about our Ford engine. And I think it was a year later, he was running a Ford engine. So, you know, I think he was out there doing some research, talking to everybody who was using Ford engines, trying to figure out what he should do. But the Ford engines were a little bit lighter than the Chevrolet engines, and that was a factor. But so I give a lot of credit to Ron Nielsen for the development of Ford engines that were used in dirt late models, and now they're quite common.
That time period, you clearly were sort of the front person, as Hip said later, polishing Dick's image, PR, public relations, but did you also get under the hood?
Yeah, that happened over time. Once we got hooked up with Nielsen, sponsorship in that became less of an issue for us. Ron had plenty of money and he was willing to spend it on the race team. So chasing the sponsorship dollar became less important to the team, and I became more involved in the actual work on the race car. And John Lamb and Jim Seeley and all the guys that were working on the car were very good to me, you know, teaching me what I needed to know to be a valuable member of the team.
What did they teach you, and what
well, I mean, I started out, you know, just sweeping out the trailer, washing the truck and trailer, washing the race car. I don't think I ever got away from that job. I think we figured out one time that we raced, I don't know, about 18 or 1900 late model features, and that's probably how many times I washed the car. So I got to be really good at washing the car, and did body work. Warren McDonald was our body fabricator at the time, and he was good about teaching me some of the tricks of the trade that he knew. And over time, I got involved in maintenance, all the weekly maintenance that had to be done on the car. And again, all those guys taught me, well, this is how we do it, and this is the way we do it. And I was able to pick that stuff up. And I really enjoyed that part of it way more than chasing the sponsorship dollar. That's hard work, chasing the sponsorship dollar. That is tough, tough, tough. This was a real pleasure for me. Greg, as you know, I was a school teacher. And so all day long, I was using, I guess you'd say, using my mind and working with young children. But at night, I'm using my hands and I'm interacting with adults. And it was a great back and forth. I had my life was really running good at the time, and I just enjoyed hanging out with those guys so much. And I feel that I brought something to the team and then added to it over time. And I hung with them right to the end. The last race, I was still there. So I had a pretty good run.
Well, you were actually there day one, 1985, when Dick was forced by circumstances to go from sportsman, eliminated the class, to now super late model. And you probably, as more than anybody, went from 1985 right to the end of 2014.
That's right. I think the only guys that were there in 85 and were still there in 14 were John Lamb, Dick, and myself. Everybody else, they came, they worked their rear end off and contributed greatly to the success we had, but circumstances in life, they drifted off and somebody else would replace them and they'd be there for a while and then they'd drift off. But I'm proud to say that I was there all 30 years.
One of the things that everybody looks towards you on many senses, but principally history. You cataloged everything dealing with Dick, and then probably research prior to that time. Where does that come from? Where does your history piece come from?
Well, my interest in learning the history of, at first, it was just State Line Speedway. And it was because Dick was winning a lot of races. And I just wondered where he was in the big picture. Is he as good as, is he winning as many races as some of the legendary guys of the past, or does he still have a way to go? So I said, well, the only way to find out is to go do the work. So I went back and cataloged every super late model race ever held at State Line and Erie Speedway from 1956 to the present with State Line, and 1961 to the present with Erie. And as you know, I've kept those records. I've faithfully shared those records with anybody that was interested. This wasn't a project that I did for myself. I could see that it would be a benefit to a lot of people, and I think it has. And the wind up is, of course, as you know, Greg, Dick did win more races than anybody else at State Line Speedway when the smoke cleared. He ended up the second most wins at Erie Speedway to Bob Shnarz. At one time, I had the feeling that we were going to be able to have the most wins at Erie too, but the team made a decision, I don't know, I can't remember exactly when, but it was that they didn't want to race Sunday nights anymore. They were going to just race Friday and Saturday. It got to be a lot. For so many years we were racing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and if we could find something in the middle of the week, we'd go to that one too. But as we got older, we kind of took Sunday night out of the equation. A big factor was that John Lamb had started his own business, and Monday morning came bright and early for Lamb Heating and Cooling, and he had to be ready to go first thing in the morning. And if you're racing at Erie late on a Sunday night, you're not ready to go first thing in the morning. It was different when he was working for somebody, but once he was owned his own business. He had to pay more attention to that. And, so I think that was one of the factors that took us away from Sunday night racing. And that's why I believe we ended up, I don't know, I think 12, 13 races short of catching Bob Shnarz at Erie's.
Vacation moment.
I don't know if it was an equivocation moment. There was maybe a moment that we doubted whether we could get there. When Ron Nielsen told us that he'd had enough and we had to find some other people to race for. We raced for John Kennedy for a couple of years, and then we raced with John and Charlie Lackey for, I think, 3 years. And frankly, we weren't winning as often as we were winning. So it was, the wins were coming, instead of winning 10, 12, 15 races a year, you know, we're down to 2 or 3 a year. And we're starting to look at it and go, man, this could take a while. Are we going to get there? You know, and we're all aging. You know, and Dick had his 60th birthday, and we're going, well, but then we got going pretty good in 2014, and actually won the last 2 races of the year at State Line, the 79th and the 80th win that pushed us over the top. And as you know, Dick announced his retirement right there. He won his 80th and he said, I'm done. And that was okay with us too. We were tired. It was a long run. 30 years is a long time to devote to that sport, and the amount of hours that it takes and the amount of dedication that it takes its toll after a while.
I'm not sure anybody has paused to say, what's a normal week of preparation? I mean, we know the racing, usually Friday, Saturday, and normally Sunday, but there's activity going on. So give us a normal week.
When we were racing 3 nights of the week, we were at the garage 7 nights of the week. When we got done racing on Sunday night, you know, we'd get home late and just drop everything, so to speak, at the garage. And then the next day, Monday, we'd be down there washing the cars, cleaning up the truck and trailer. John would come down and take an inventory of what we'd broken or used up that weekend, and he'd get on the phone and start ordering all the stuff that needed to come in. So that the Monday was like a wash day and an inventory day, and then Tuesday we'd start working on the cars, and we worked on the cars Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. And when I say work on the cars, we had more than one car. At one time, Nielsen had given us 3 cars. And we were using all 3 of those cars. So like we might take 1 car on a Friday night, another car on a Saturday night, another car on a Sunday night. Well, now you've used up 3 cars, and now you've got to turn those 3 cars around and get them ready for the next weekend. So, I mean, we'd work at the garage Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. Well, now you go race the car Friday. Now you got to come home on Friday morning or Saturday morning, get that car washed up and start the maintenance on that car. Well, now you grab another car and you go to State Line on Saturday night and race the dog crap out of that car. Hope you have something left to take home, and start to get that one cleaned up on Sunday morning and begin the maintenance on that car. And then you grab your 3rd car and you go to Erie on Sunday night, and then it's all over. Toward the end, we were down to, it sounds like I'm complaining, but we were down to 2 cars. And that makes it a little harder because you've got to turn over a car. If you raced it on Friday, you got to turn that car over and get it ready to race on Saturday, and turn it over and get it to race on Sunday. Nielsen also got us involved in crate late model racing because he wanted to get that class going at his track that he owned in Conneaut, and he thought the best way to lend credibility to that class was to have Dick race in that class, so that it wouldn't be seen as some sort of a a lower division, something that maybe people wouldn't want to be a part of. The theory that Nielsen had was, well, if Dick Barton's racing in this class, this must be a pretty good class, and Nielsen was absolutely right. Crate late model racing, it took off at his track, and it's had a very successful run in this whole area. I think it was like in 2007 maybe that Ron convinced us that we had to get into this crate late model racing. So now we're taking 2 cars to the racetrack when we go. So now we got to get another truck, another trailer. Well, now you got to turn over 2 cars on Saturday morning. You know, it was just, but it was great. I'm not complaining a bit. I loved it. The guys loved it, but I'm just saying it takes its toll after a while. It's a lot of work.
Connie, that was Raceway 7?
Raceway 7. Ron Nielsen bought that racetrack. I can't exactly remember what year it was. I'm going to say 95, 90, somewhere, 94 maybe, somewhere in that area. Because we had been racing at Lernerville on Friday nights, and Ron had the opportunity to buy Raceway 7 in Conneaut, and obviously then we switched over and started running his racetrack on Friday nights. Ron did a masterful job with that racetrack. It was in just terrible condition when he bought it. He spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and he made that place a show place. And it was as good as any racetrack that we ever went to. It was fun. We really enjoyed it. That's kind of an interesting thing too, that when the racetrack owner owns the car that's racing at his racetrack, people think, well, you're going to get all the breaks. Well, it was actually the opposite of that. And Ron said to us when we started going to his racetrack, he says, I'm telling you up front, you're not going to get any favoritism. You're going to get the other end of that stick. If it's close, if I've got to make a decision and it's close, it's going to the other guy. You're getting no breaks at this racetrack. The other thing he said was, there will be no bending of the rules on my race car. Don't even think about doing anything outside of the rules. He says, my car cannot be a cheater. It has to be by the book. Every sentence by the book. Not that we would have cheated anyway, but anyway. But
well, now that the statute of limitations is run generally, you know, every track has certain rules or guidelines, and you could subject to being torn down at the end of a race. One, were you ever torn down? Or in two, what were the tricks?
We were looked at a lot. When you're winning, everyone assumes you're cheating. See, they're cheating and they're not winning. So if you're winning, you must be cheating better than they're cheating. So we got looked at a lot. Bill Hansen, who's in the background here, will testify to that. We were looked at a lot. People were always, the track officials were always hanging around our trailer, watching what we were doing, trying to catch us at doing something that wasn't right. And no, we never got caught doing anything incorrect.
Were there any tricks?
Well, as long as the statute of limitations have passed, we might have treated some tires now and then. Rumor has it.
Just curious. I'm not asking. I'm not going to go any deeper. This is a Dick Barton celebration.
Yeah, this probably won't make the final movie anyway, Greg.
Because you'll be the censor. Also, you get wins because you're the driver. So he got 80 wins driving, not because of the car necessarily. Was there a time where during the course of the heat races and the semis where the car wasn't going to function and where he had to borrow somebody else's car?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of times we jumped into somebody else's car. must have tore the crap out of our car in a heat race or blew up an engine. I remember specifically one time we were racing at Little Valley, and we blew up the rear end in a heat race, and weren't going to be able to race the feature. So we were starting to load up, and John and Charlie Lackey were parked next to us, and they came over and said, "Dick, go drive our car." So I remember Dick got in John's car, and I think he had to start last because there was a driver change between the heat race and the feature. And anyway, so Dick jumped in John's car, a car he'd never been in his life. He drove that thing from the back to the front and was going to win the race. And somebody, well, I'm not going to tell you who, somebody left the nut on the top of the air cleaner loose, and the air cleaner blew off and made a heck of a mess. And anyway, Dick didn't finish that race. He didn't want to get all the dirt down in the engine, so he shut off the car. But that was one I remember in particular, that he jumped in somebody else's car, and there may have been a couple at State Line as well.
I remember I was filming one day your event, and you had all kinds of problems, and you had to run for a part, and
oh yeah,
and there was lots of scrambling,
yes,
and with the potential
yes,
of him driving somebody else's car, probably a Lackey car.
That was another. It was at State Line, and again, I think it was a rear end that blew up, and we didn't think we were going to be able to. Well, I should say that. Yeah, it was a Lackey car. The Lackeys had another rear end, but it was down to Chubb Franks' garage. So some of us took a pickup truck and ran down to Chubb's garage and got the other rear end and brought it back to the racetrack and started switching it over into the car. But in the meantime, it wasn't clear to us that we were going to get that job done. So we made arrangements with somebody else for Dick to run their car. And if you were filming that, I remember we had, well, it was Greg Oakes' son that had a car. And he brought that car down and had it sitting there idling, and Dick actually got in the car and started to get all buckled up, and about that time we finished up the work on our own car, got the rear end switched over and all that stuff, and Dick hopped out of the one car and hopped back into his own car, and yeah, I mean that's part of racing. Shame on us for not carrying our own rear end with us that night and having to go down to Chubb's garage to get one.
Hey, I tried to film someplace. Because I remember that was yeah, I do remember that, exactly. As you reflect back, Dick principally was the driver. Mm-hmm. John Lamb quarterbacked the team.
Crew chief.
He was the crew chief. And where did the two intersect as far as just strategizing the setup of the car?
All the time.
Okay.
Constantly. Constant communication between John and Dick. And not just at the racetrack, but all week long. They were on the phone constantly with each other, talking. That was the reason that there was success, is the communication. Neither one can do it without the other. To be successful in racing, it's kind of like this table, Greg, that has 4 legs on it. You've got to have a team, you got to have a driver, you got to have a lot of equipment, and you got to have a lot of money to keep all that stuff operating. But in the middle of the table is where all that stuff all comes together, and that's communication, and that's the ability to work with other people, and it's the ability to set aside your own ego and do what's best for the team. And I think that's what John and Dick and Jim Seeley and Warren McDonald and Del Seekings and all the guys who worked on the team, that's what they were able to do. They put aside their own egos. They might have wanted to do one thing, but they all talked, and they said, this is probably the best way to proceed. And I think that was the reason that Dick had a lot of success, was because it was a team effort. We had all four corners of the table, and we had the middle of the table.
As you kind of, you're probably one of the few people that can look at this from 10,000 feet. What does the Dick Barton team, and I'll use that, Dick Barton team, legacy and maybe the lesson to learn from that?
Wow. Hadn't thought about it. I don't know if this answers your question, but I think we're proud of what we were able to accomplish. Dick is going to be inducted into the Dirt Late Model Hall of Fame in Kentucky later this summer. And that's huge for basically a local guy. A guy who didn't race for a living, who didn't race all over the country, who raced primarily in this region. For a local guy to get recognized for excellence at the national level it's pretty amazing. It's pretty humbling to think that your team can be recognized in a Hall of Fame that has the greats of the sport, and that people who go to that Hall of Fame will see the 28B as part of that hall. I guess that's our legacy, and we're damn proud of it.
What's the question, Randy, I should be asking you? You've done a wonderful introspection of it all. Maybe an incident or two which would underscore the character of the team?
Well, the race team was kind of like a family. We were really close. I mean, we did everything. We went to birthday parties of kids of team members, and we went to graduations, and I mean, we did everything together. But like families, you don't always get along. There's squabbles. And there were serious squabbles where this guy was mad at that guy, and this guy was mad over at that guy, and it wasn't all balloons and roses. But like any family, you kind of work past all of that, and as long as you have that common goal, and the common goal was to win races. It wasn't about who was going to get the credit for, who picked the right tires that night, who put the right setup in the car, who made the winning pass. All of that stuff didn't matter. As long as we won, that was all that mattered. John Lamb had a great saying. He said, "You're only as good as your next race." So what you did the night before, the week before, the year before, doesn't matter. You're only as good as your next race. So everybody has got to forget what happened last night. If you're mad that that guy didn't do something right, forget it. It doesn't matter anymore. It's the next race. And everybody's got to be pulling together to be successful in the next race.
But ultimately there was a last race.
Oh, yeah.
80th win race. Walk me through that.
Wow, it was incredible. We had a fairly good starting spot. We were somewhere up near the front. I don't remember. We weren't on the front row, but we were up near the front. So we had a pretty good starting spot, and we knew we had a pretty good car. We'd had a pretty good heat race, and we'd won the week before. But not that matters, Greg, because you're only as good as your next race. But we had a notebook, you know what I mean? We had a notebook of what worked, and so race starts and Hackett our good friend Chris Hackett, great guy, started on the pole, and the track was kind of heavy at the beginning of the racetrack.
45 lap,
It was longer than that. It might have been 40. It was a longer race than normal, and the track was kind of heavy at the time. And Chris is an animal when the track is heavy. He's as good as anybody up there, and he checked out. And Dick got into second, but I mean Chris was gone. And we go, oh man, I don't think we're going to get there. Well, over the course of the race, the track started to dry out a little bit, and where Chris was running up against the cushion, it started to go away, and Dick was running more around the bottom, and that was coming in, and we were gaining, and we were gaining. We could see he was getting there. He was getting there, but then here comes Robbie Blair. He'd been following Dick around the bottom, and he was coming on us hard. We go, oh crap, we got Hackett up there, and Robbie's all over us. I don't know. I think it was turn 4 of the second to the last. They were coming to the white flag on turn 4, the second to the last lap. Hackett was up on the cushion, and he didn't hit the cushion just right, and he got a little sideways, and Dick scooted around him on the bottom, and Robbie followed him, and it was a lot of joy in Mudville, as they say. It was a goal that we'd been racing for many years, to finally achieve it. There was a huge sigh of relief, and then literally tears of joy.
Sure. That was the last race of the season, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. So I assume you would have gone on. You're that close. I mean, if they had not turned out the way it happened,
That's interesting. We've talked about that since then, because we still come down to Shawbucks and tell our best lies and war stories down here. Every race team's got to have a place to be, and Shawbucks was our place to be for many years, as was Miley's before that, and Chubba's before that, but we kind of settled in at Shawbucks toward the end. And we've talked about that. What if we had ended on 79 and we were tied with Bob, and we would have had to race one more year? Would we have done it? Yeah, we would have done it. Because when you're that close, you got to get it.
Yeah. This has been great, Randy. Anything that you think we probably should touch that, since you're sort of the wrap-up of the interviews?
Well, I think about all the people that helped the race team over the years, that maybe are in the background, that don't get the credit they deserve. The sponsors that we had that showed faith in us and gave us money. Guys like Phil Shaw, who tuned our carburetors for forever and did a masterful job. Chassis builders that we had over the years. Barry Wright, Ray Callahan, Masters, Rocket, GRT. GRT was a huge chassis for us. That we won a boatload of races in a GRT, and Joe Garrison was a big help to our race team. So I think about people like that don't get the credit for what they meant, but they were so appreciated by our race team. We had a retirement party for Dick right here at Shawbucks, and all those people that I've mentioned and that had a part of our success, we invited them to that party, and it was wonderful to see everybody and to share our success with all the people that helped us get there.
Dick beat the record of Bobby Shnarz.
Mm-hmm.
Did Bobby stay in touch with you guys during the process?
Darn right. Bob was a great fan of our team, a great friend of our team. Bob came to the retirement party of Dick. Bob he had a great attitude about the whole thing. He said, hey, records are meant to be broken. And I guess that's our attitude as well. If someone goes up there and wins 81 races at State Line, God bless them, because we know they've worked hard to get there, because it's not easy. We're just, like I say, we're proud of what we accomplished, and the friendships that we made, you know, they'll never end. All those guys on the race team are still my friends. Like I say, we still get together for dead birds and brewskis down to Shawbucks.
Great, fantastic, Randy. Thank you. This was terrific. I can see the end credits. So right now is you'll have, you know, all of those names. You know, just
as many as I can remember.
Remember that, and if you can't remember it, they don't exist.
It's funny. I didn't say this in the film, but when we were winning races, I mean a lot of races. I mean, one year we won 20-some races. Back then, we had more people wanting to be a part of our race team than we didn't have enough room in the truck to put them all in the truck. All the guys who wanted to be a part of the Barton team, you know, they were lined up out the door wanting to be a part of what we were doing. And then when the wins became farther and farther apart, it was like COVID-19. Where is everybody?
It does.
Everybody was social distancing themselves from us.
It does beg the question. We talked to Bobby, but were there people rooting against you, Bobby, because of your success? Did you have a noticeable group rooting?
No question about that, Greg. When Dick won, not everybody was on their feet clapping. Some people were on their feet flipping them off or on their feet booing. No one likes the winner. Well, I shouldn't say no one likes the winner. Half the people like the winner, half the people don't like the winner because they want their guy to win. So, yeah, it wasn't always a bed of roses. That's part of sports. If you're the New York Yankees, you got a huge fan base, but you also got a huge base of people that don't want you to win. And yeah, we experienced that. Bob experiences that. Experienced it when he was racing. Max Blair is experiencing it now. He's got a ton of fans, but there's a ton of boo birds when he wins. It really showed up last year when he won the World Outlaw race at State Line Speedway. I thought, man, this is wonderful. A local guy wins the World of Outlaw race at State Line Speedway. Dick had done that, and I can remember the emotion of that night. And now Max is winning, and I'm as happy for Max as I was for Dick. And then I look around, and there's people booing. I go, are you crazy? This is a local guy that just beat the big dogs, and you can't even pat him on the back? Beyond comprehension.
Is he the guy likely, if anybody, to put together a string?
He's got all four parts of the table. He's got a great crew. He's a brilliant driver. They've got great sponsors, and they seem to have some money, and they work together well. The things that you can't predict, though, are how long is he going to race? Is he going to make a career out of it? Is he going to race 30 years? Is he going to get hurt? Dick never got hurt. Is he going to be able to keep sponsorship money rolling in? Are the racetracks going to be open? Is State Line going to be open in 10 more years so that he has a chance to break the record? There's too many variables for me to say, yeah, Max is the guy. He certainly has the ability, and he's got all four legs of the table to be the guy, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I can't predict it.
How old is he?
Around 30.
30. He's certainly done much in a short period of time.
Oh my gosh, I think he's won, I don't have the exact number in my head today. I wasn't prepared, but I think he's won maybe 30 races at state line. I mean, he's got 50 to go. but here's a guy. Max is winning 5, 6, 7 races a year. So give him another 10 years, and yeah, the math says he can be there if he chooses to stay at state line. Yeah. Will he get a ride on a bigger circuit? Will he be the next Chubb Frank who's out there racing on a national level and doesn't worry about the record at State Line Speedway? So too many variables, Greg, but yeah, Max he's as good as anybody I've ever seen. Yeah. And I've been watching races for a long time at State Line, and he's as good as any of them.
Even Dean Levy?
Yes.
Gosh. Thank you.
Yeah.